Hey y'all, Rob here with ATX Legal, and today I've got a follow-up video to a video I posted a couple months ago regarding SB 6, which is the new bill which affects bonding in Texas and affects who is eligible, especially for PR bonds. Now, in that video, I talked about how we wouldn't really know how the bill plays out until we see it in practice. And we are starting to see it in practice, and let me tell you, it's not very pretty. Okay, so first off, as I talked about in that video, certain people are ineligible for PR bonds. Anybody who's on a probation or deferred adjudication for a violent offense, felony, or misdemeanor is typically not eligible. There's a few exceptions. And anybody who is facing pending charges for a violent charge is also not eligible for a PR bond. And that affects a lot of people. For certain people, pretrial services isn't even going to present those PR bond requests to a judge because they're not eligible under the law. But then another consequence, which might not have been obvious just from reading the law, is starting to take effect, and that has to do with walkthroughs. Now, a walkthrough is where you have an outstanding warrant, and to clear that warrant, you turn yourself in, but you post a bond ahead of time so you know you're not going to be taken into the jail. And in the past, this process would only take an hour or so, hour and a half tops. You wouldn't ever change your clothes. You wouldn't be taken down to the jail. It's a rather quick process and mostly painless. So if you have an outstanding warrant in Travis County and you need to do a walkthrough and you need to turn yourself in, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to this video because there are 4 key ways in which it's changed, and it's really gotten a lot harder to do a walkthrough. So if you've done one before, or if you've talked to someone who's told you what that process is like, if it wasn't after January 1st of 2022, that process is completely different. First, if you're going to do a walkthrough, you now have to hire an attorney. In the past, you could have gone through a bondsman and posted bond. The bondsman could have gone and done the walkthrough for you without an attorney. Now, the sheriff will no longer do the walkthrough for you unless you've hired an attorney and you've waived magistration. And all magistration is where a judge will read you your rights, your right to remain silent, and he'll read the charges against you. It's mostly a formality, but if you don't have an attorney to waive it, that means you have to wait for a judge. In Travis County, they'll usually do that a couple times a day. So if you show up at the wrong time, not waiving magistration is going to cost you 6, 7, 8 hours, or even overnight. You might have to spend a night in jail if the judge has already done his magistration for that day. Second, even if you do have an attorney, that walkthrough is still going to take longer than it used to. The reason for that is a very small provision. A lot of people overlooked it, including myself. In SB 6, it requires that a report be made that the judge must review before granting a bond. Now, that report is very similar to the reports that have always been made. That's why it didn't really strike me as anything that was going to affect the process. But there's a little provision that says that the report must have the date and time of arrest. What does that mean? That means you have to be booked in before that report can even be generated. So I can go to a judge and ask if he's going to sign the PR bond, and we can have that assured that he is going to sign it, but that PR bond can't be signed until the judge has actually reviewed that report. That report can't be generated until you turn yourself in, so that lengthens the process. And of course, when you're turning yourself in with no bond signed, that means they're going to be treating you just as a regular turn-in, not like a walkthrough. That has some significant consequences. You're going to be cuffed. You're going to be taken downstairs and put with the general population. You're going to have your clothes and possessions taken. You're going to be given jail clothes. And then when it's time for you to process out, they're going to have to process you out like normal. That process takes hours. So now you're starting to see that this walkthrough process that used to be so quick, it used to be half an hour to an hour at the most, is now looking like a 6 to 8 hour process at best. And because of that report as well, in Travis County, the sheriff is no longer doing out-of-county walkthroughs. That means if you have a warrant out of, let's say, El Paso, Texas, your best procedure is going to be to actually travel to El Paso, do the walkthrough, do your turn-in there. You theoretically could do it in Travis County and just turn yourself in, but if there's a problem with your bond in El Paso, you risk being in jail for weeks while you have to get transferred to El Paso. I'm recommending anyone who has a warrant out of county that they go to that county to do the turn-in there, not do a walkthrough process here in Travis County. And one final issue affecting bonds, and this one might seem minor unless you really know how the process works. If you're going to have a bond hearing to reduce bond, you have to go to the judge who set the bond. Now, in Travis County, most of the time, judges who set the bonds are municipal court judges. And to give you a little context here, They don't have a permanent office. They all kind of go to the same office in the downtown courthouse. It's in the basement. A lot of times I don't have their contact information. They don't have a staff who answers calls. So if I'm having to track down a municipal court judge to get a hearing on a bond, that's going to be extremely difficult. Now, since this bill passed, defense attorneys have circulated emails and phone numbers for these judges, but still, these judges aren't used to setting up hearings. They work on a shift, they handle their shift, and so if you are arrested, you'll go in front of this judge, and that will probably be the only time you see that judge. Now, we're going to have to track down those judges if we ever want to have a bond hearing. In the past, these hearings would be handled in the court where the case is actually proceeding. So for a misdemeanor, it would be in county court. For a felony, it would be in district court, and you would go in front of that judge. Now, you're going to have to find the judge who actually set the bond until those cases are either indicted or there's an information filed in the court where it's proceeding, and that can take months and months. So it's just one more little add-on that's going to take a little bit longer. People are going to be in jail a little bit longer while their cases are pending. So each of these individual changes might not have a huge effect on any particular case, but taken together, they really affect people who are charged with crime. And for those of you who are happy about this, maybe you're tough on crime and you just want to see people get punished commensurate to what they did, consider that these are people who have been accused, they're not convicted, and this is going to disproportionately affect people who can't afford it. It's going to widen that gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I would ask you to just give a little thought to, in practical terms, how do these changes actually affect the safety of the community? Does keeping someone in jail for 7 hours instead of 1 hour actually make the community safer? Does requiring people to go through a bondsman and pay for a bond, pay for an attorney, does that truly make the community safer, or does it just punish people who don't have the means to afford these things? I would argue that the community is not protected any better by these laws, and I would argue that it actually serves to create some contempt among the people affected by these laws, and that's really not good for our community. Of course, none of this has been legal advice, but if you are looking for a walkthrough, it's more important than ever that you hire an attorney. So if you do have an active warrant and you're looking for some help and you don't know what to do, visit us at ATX Legal. You can set up a free consultation. We'll talk about the best process for your case. Thanks, and have a good day.